Why don't you do it?
Let me grab my cheat sheet. Hello everyone. Welcome to the 21st Century Writer podcast, where we talk about writing, publishing, and most of all, the mindset you need to flourish as author in the 21st century. I'm Hannah Steenbach, a German author and coach, and with me today are...
My name is Diane Patterson. I'm a novelist and blogger and the co-host of the podcast. And our guest is...
It's me. Who's saying that? Me or Hannah?
So, do you go by A.D. Trosper, or...?
Well, I write under A.D. Trosper, but Audra is my name. So.
Okay, just wondering how to refer to you today. I mean, some people don't want
their
name used at all, so...
Oh, you can call me Audra normally, just as far as my author name. Just make sure that people know it's A.D., because if you go looking for Audra, you're not going to find me.
Yes, we will have a link to her page in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
So Audra is an author of both fantasy and young adult paranormal romance.
Yeah.
And her series, her Dragon Call series, has been really, really successful. You'll have to tell us about all the awards you won. I think you probably won a lot of them. I remember a lot of them, but I don't remember all of them. Well, go ahead.
So
do what?
So I was going to suggest that we start out with a little background on you, to tell the listeners who you are, and then we can talk about what you do and how you go about it. Let's say.
But usually we start out talking about the good and the bad of the week.
Yes. So
let's do that real quick. Get that out of the way.
Second, yes. Mine will be really short. Perhaps I'm not sure whether I'm still on vacation or what's going on. But on Monday I read something on the internet. Now I spend a lot of time on the internet. I'm a little bit of an internet junkie, and have been for several decades at this point. I remember when my husband came home and said, "There's this thing called Netscape. You should try it."
Famous last words.
Yeah, famous last words. And I read an article, and it didn't have to do with publishing. It didn't really have to do with me. It affected someone else. It concentrated on something else tangential to my life. And if you know anything about my life, you can probably figure out what this article was. This was a big deal. And it was such an annoying article that I said, that's it, I've had it, I'm done with the internet. I haven't gone to any writing boards. I've been to Facebook to look for notes that people have sent me. I'm not looking at any of my groups on Facebook. It's like I'm done. I can't handle it anymore. This article was so, I'll be extreme, so vile in how wrong it was about this particular topic that I just said, that's it. I can't handle it anymore. The only thing I can handle right now is Twitter. And after last night's incident in Louisiana, I can't even handle Twitter right now. I am taking an internet break and concentrating on other things because I've reached my breaking point. In addition, I wrote about 5,000 words for the week, which was way less than I was planning on, but...
You wrote.
Yeah, I wrote.
You got words on the page.
Yeah. So, how about you, Hannah? I hope your week was better.
I was writing every day, even if it was just a little bit, until Tuesday, when a friend of mine posted very weird things. We talked on Skype. He was quite delirious, and 3 hours later, I found out he had died. That kind of stopped me from writing. I haven't gone back. I'm more or less able to talk about it now, but that was a really bad shock. It was one of my oldest and best online friends, and we've been in the same chat channel for about 10 years. And we have supported each other through a lot of crises and a lot of fun and a lot of quirks. And I've been really doing very little other than doing my day job and coping with that. Trying to find out how to possibly get flowers to his service. I'm not sure if I can do that, but yeah, that was the big thing in my week, and it kind of threw me. And I'm glad we're doing the podcast because it brings some normalcy back into the whole thing. But I haven't written since Tuesday. I just could not wrap my mind into any of my stories. I just could not.
There are times when I think it's okay to take a break.
Not right.
Yeah, I'm not beating myself up for that. And it's just, it sort of killed everything. I didn't even blog. I managed my Wednesday blog. I did not manage my Thursday blog. There was just no way. So I'll catch up on that next week. And I hope I can go back to writing this weekend. I have the first stirrings of ideas, so that's good.
Yeah.
So sorry. These things happen. It's just, and I think as writers we need to stay connected to emotions, so we can put them on the page. So yes, I did feel that emotion. I did not shut it away. Oof. Yes. All right, let's go on to nicer stuff.
Yeah. All right, our guest, Audra Trosper.
Yes.
Let's talk about you, because that's why you're here. Your background, how you got into writing, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Okay, well, my background has nothing to do with writing other than the stuff I just did for myself, little stories. I have a whole bunch that got started, never got finished, will never see the light of day, but they were kind of, the stepping stones and whatever.
Yes.
Other than that, I have 3 kids that I'm trying to keep up with. 2 are big, hairy teenagers now. Then I have my youngest, who's 7. Huge garden, as Hannah knows from following me on Facebook. I pulled over 100 pounds of tomatoes out of my garden in the past week alone.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, we've been canning. I spent yesterday canning, and I will spend today after this canning. And at some point, we will stop canning, probably whenever, I don't know, winter gets here. And then, I didn't take any writing classes. I didn't get a degree in any kind of writing stuff. I went to college for radiology technician, actually, at one point. So there was, a lot of stuff, and I got to writing because my husband kept saying, you should write a book. And I said, I can't write a whole book, I'm going to write an entire book. Ooh. But then I would complain about something characters did in a book or how it ended or something along that line. Why don't you write your own and then you can have it, well, I can't do that. He kept saying, yes, you can. You have the talent. So I decided, fine, I'll write a book. And everything I read said, write what you love. Well, I love dragons. I'm kind of obsessed with them. So I decided I would write a book about dragons. And I told my mother this. So I want to write a book about dragons. And she's like, okay, I'm sure it'll be great. I'm like, okay, great. And I have 2 people thinking I can do this. So I just started trying to think of what world they were in. I had a couple characters show up and introduce themselves to me, which was kind of cool. And then it just started snowballing from there. And then once I opened the door to let characters in, a whole bunch of others started moving in that were totally unconnected with that story. And now I've got a story stack 7 deep that I'm trying to get through my head on. So, yeah.
And then you went.
Go ahead.
So you actually sat down and wrote your first story, which is your first book, Embers of Galjoy.
Yes.
Did you write it sort of literally, starting from the first page and going all the way through until you wrote the end?
Yes. Yep. I actually, at the time I started writing it, I was a manager at Walmart. And on my lunch hours, I would write in a notebook in the break room. And at first, some of my coworkers were reading over my shoulder. And then as it progressed, I would be writing, and then my coworkers would come in and just steal my notebook from me while I'm writing. And I'm like, hello, I need to, and they're like, well, I gotta know what happened since you wrote last yesterday, So I had various different people who kept stealing notebook to see what I had written since the day before. And everything. And then I was able to kind of to quit doing that and be able to stay home, which was nice. and focus more on my writing. But then in the middle of all that, I ended up having my last child. So there's like 2 years that are just, I don't really remember. They're kind of this infant-induced, sleep deprivation years. And so I really didn't write during those years. And then I transferred it all to the computer, and the story changed drastically from what I had written in my notebook to what ended up on the computer. So it was for the better, but yeah.
So this was, I'm guessing, about 5 years ago?
Oh, no, further back than that. Let's see. I started writing it the tail end of 2005.
Okay.
So, and I finished it, and let's see, I finished writing it in 2011, but I didn't publish it till 2012. So.
And you, what did you decide to do with it? I mean, did you start querying?
Actually, when I first started writing it back in 2005, there really wasn't a self-publishing movement at the time. About the only way was through traditional publishing. So I wrote it with the idea that I would probably never see it in print, because getting a traditional publisher is so difficult that I really didn't look at it as a, hey, I'm going to have this book in print, I'm going to sell it everywhere. It was more of a, I've let these people into my head, and now I have to write their story or they're going to drive me crazy. So I figured I would write the whole trilogy, even if it did nothing more than, sit on my shelf in manuscript form. I would at least have it. And then about the time that I was finishing Embers, the self-publishing movement had really started. And I started looking into it, and there was, people saying, oh, you could just put a PDF on, just load it up into Amazon, you publish it, you're great, you're fine, And so I started looking at how to do that. Of course, I don't know what I was doing, so I started looking into that. And thankfully, there were a few people on the Kindle boards that were kind of like shrieking and yelling about, don't do that, go that way. So I listened, and I didn't fall off the platform and get ran over by a train, which was great. So I did end up in a really good online critique group called Critique Circle. And that's why I ended up spending another year before I released Embers, running it through that. And I learned a lot about my craft during that. There was one critiquer in particular, B.J. Whittington, and she also writes fantasy, but I was writing not in a close third person. I mean, I don't sure how to explain it, but I kept distancing myself from the person, and she kept working with me. I mean, with each chapter, she would just kind of beat it into me a little more, and then finally one chapter, it clicked, and I was looking, I was like, oh, I get it now. So, yeah, it took me a little bit, but I learned so much through that. Then I put it out on my own. I made my own cover, and I put it out there and everything. That was a mistake. Because it was unedited, it was my own cover, it was just kind of a, but that's what everybody was doing, so I jumped off the bridge with them. They always say, if all your friends jump off the cliff, are you going to? Yep, I did, whatever. So then I met some other author friends online and got steered to the company I use now for my books. It's been better for me, best thing I ever did. So.
And what do they do for you?
They do it all. They handle my editing, my formatting, my interior design, my cover design, everything. Even help with some marketing and stuff. So they're always there if I have a question. It's great. So it's Blue Harvest Creative.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I have heard of them a time or two.
I imagine being friends here with Hannah. So I was just stumbling around in the dark until I ran into them, and it's gone much smoother. So.
Yeah, I remember you got a complete cover redesign of
I
Big
did.
Featherin.
It was interesting because originally they just kind of worked with some of the fonts and stuff on the cover I originally had. I was kind of attached to it at first, so I was, I was that new author. No, don't take my cover away, even though it wasn't that great. And so, but as we went through it, I realized I didn't really have what I needed to do the second cover, so I was going to have them do it, and I knew that the covers needed to be kind of alike in a series, so I asked them to redo both, redo my original cover and go ahead and do the second cover and stuff. And he started out trying to kind of copy what I had done because he knew I kind of liked what I had, even though it wasn't that great. So he was trying to recreate that, and I told him, I said, what are you doing? I said, no. I said, I took you on as my designer. Do it. Don't don't try to do something that I've already got. Don't try to. I said, do whatever you think looks good, because this is why I have you, and this is why my cover doesn't look that good, because obviously I don't know what I'm doing. So you do, have at it. And he did, and I was impressed, very happy. So.
Yeah, I think the new cover of the whole series, it has this huge dragon face right in the middle of the book. You get this dragon staring at you.
Yeah.
And it changes color through the series, which is kind of something many series do. But
Yeah.
I think it made a huge difference. Did you see a change in sales after you changed the cover?
Absolutely, most definitely. Sales, the covers changed right about the same time the second book came out, and sales just, I mean, I was astounded, quite frankly. It was pretty amazing, and it's interesting. I don't know if you've noticed this, Hannah, because you've read all three of them. The color of the dragon on the front cover is the dragon color that has the most to do with the ending of the book. You'll note that it was Kieran who ended the battle in the first book, and it's the red dragon, and then Kelenar dealt mostly with his issue at the end of the second book, so you have a blue dragon, and then it was Melina and her dragon, so you ended up with a silver dragon. So it was kind of cool to the way it ended.
Do we need to put a spoiler alert on that?
No, I didn't say anything that shouldn't be said.
It's actually, I didn't realize that, Audra. That's I love these kind of things. I love when you say that. And I don't think we need a spoiler alert. It doesn't really. They're all characters from the first book, so.
Yeah, you haven't read I didn't mention any characters you didn't meet in the first book, so.
Right.
Or what I did to them.
Okay. So it took you quite a while to do your first book.
Yes.
And did you work on the trilogy right away? Or did you work on other projects and then go back to the dragons?
Well, interestingly enough, Dragon's Call was originally just Embers at Galderling. It was going to be a standalone. Ha! It would have been a really big one, wouldn't it? And once I realized that it was going to become more, and it got out of hand, and the characters did what they wanted, and I realized I had a series, so I had to think up some things that became Dragon's Call. I pretty much worked straight through, except for in the middle of the second book, I got hit by my young adult paranormal romance, and they attacked me. I always say I have a waiting room in my head, and I have all these characters sitting around these cheap plastic chairs, and they're reading out of date magazines while they wait for me and everything. But these characters barged in, and they came up to the front desk, and they demanded to be written, and I could not get security to throw them out, so I wrote them. It hit me so hard. I actually wrote the first 50,000 words of that book in 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah, I did Nano in 5 days.
Yeah.
I didn't hardly eat. I would stay up until I collapsed, and then I would wake up the next morning and immediately hit my computer. I checked out. My husband, thankfully, took care of the kids. He even took care of me. He kept my coffee cup full and would put food in front of me and tap me on the shoulder, because I wear headphones and I listen to music while I write. And he would like, hey, you need to eat at some point. You should try to, remember to actually feed yourself. So I would do that, and then after the first 5 days, I had to go to the store. I had to run some errands, and it was really surreal.
In winter, because you didn't have the garden.
Yeah, exactly, and it was so surreal when I stepped outside, because the real world was still there, and I had been out of it for 5 days. I was like, oh wow, look, it's all still here. So yeah, I haven't ever been hit with writing like that since. I actually hope never to be again. It was exhausting, but yeah. It was a surprise, and now I'm actually currently writing the second book in that series. So
how long did you find writing the second and third dragon books in comparison to the first one?
Very different. It actually, all told, took me like, I think it was like 6 years about 6 years, a little less if I take out the 2 years from where I had the child. It took me 18 months for the second book, and it took me about 18 months for the third book. So,
okay.
I'm not a real fast writer. So
except for this 5 days.
Except for the 5-day one, yeah, when it was just kept spilling out all over the place. So, yeah.
So let me just ask, do you? I assume that you read dragon books before you started yours. You weren't just hit by a dragon idea.
Not completely, no. I've read Anne McCaffrey. I have read Eragon. That was the one thing I did as I was writing mine was to think of ways to make them different than. I wanted it to be, I wanted my hatchings, my dragons, whatever, to be their own. I didn't want them to take after, Anne McCaffrey or Eragon or anything like that. So those are actually the only 2 dragon books I've ever read.
Oh, okay.
Those.
So I would ask the same thing about the YA paranormal romance. Do you?
I read extensively in that
Okay.
in that genre. I like it because I like the romance. I love romance. Love reading romance, but adult romance is often too adult for me.
Yeah.
I would prefer not to read. People can go behind their doors and close it, and I don't need to see or read or whatever every move they make and every sound. I don't need to know that. So I like young adult because it never gets to that point. I mean, even if there is something, it's always behind closed doors. So it's like the soap opera where it pans to the fire, and So I'm not real big. I mean, not that I won't, because I have read them. I actually I cut my teeth on it with Christine Feehan. I don't know if you've read Christine Feehan. She has very detailed scenes, but I would kind of just skim past them to get back to the story. So, yeah.
Yes.
So have you found that writing these books has affected your reading of the genre, or do you continue to read in it as much as you did?
I continue to read in it as much as I did. Amazingly, I can't read fantasy while I'm writing my fantasy. That's the one thing I can't do. I have to stay away and do my thing otherwise. But it never gets mixed up when I read the young adult paranormal romance. I don't know if it's just because what I'm writing is different, and I'm not writing, vampires or something like that. So at this point, I don't know if that's why I don't write about shifters and things like that. So it's probably just because it's a little different than what I write. So.
Okay.
Well, from the way you describe your writing, I'm pretty certain you're not a plotter. Is that right?
No, I'm not a plotter. I tried plotting. I did. I wrote out like this outline type thing, and then my characters looked at it, and they laughed at me, and they crumpled it up, and they threw it back at me. I went back to being a scribe, writing down everything that they were doing. So, no, I don't plot. Sometimes I get stuck because of that. I'm like, what's going to happen next? And I have to wait and let the story kind of percolate in my head. And then one moment I'll have like this, oh, that's what's supposed to happen. And then I like run in and, then I take off.
So do you find that you have to rewrite, or do you find that it comes out pretty much right the first time?
I have to rewrite. I'm not going to claim that I'm, am glorious and can do that. I do have to do some rewrites. Sometimes I have to rearrange, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with it. Like, oh, I've got that in the wrong place, so I have to move it or whatever. I don't have to do extensive rewrites necessarily, especially with my fantasy, but then it does take me a long time, so there's a lot of... I'm very slow about it, but very meticulous with it. So my biggest problem with that is forgetting the little words, because my brain seems to, when I'm writing, seems to assume that things like it and of and her, they're all implied words that the reader should just know should be there. And then when I go back and I try to do my self-edits, I always inevitably read what I thought I wrote, not what is actually. So, yeah.
So you got to change the font.
Yeah, well, hey, I never thought of that.
Print it out in a different font.
I never thought of that.
That will mess your brain up.
Awesome. I'm going to have to do that. Yeah. I never thought about that.
So do you use, I mean, you mentioned Blue Harvest Creative does editing, and you do use them for editing, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I like it. The editors there have been kind of vetted and stuff, and so I don't have to worry too much about if they're going to actually do a good job. I mean, I know they took some new editors on, so, it will be interesting to work with one of them. I haven't worked with one of them yet, so we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, they pretty much do everything.
I remember there's a story about editing Embers.
Oh, yeah. That one started out,
So this is the first book.
This is the first book, 132,000 words, and I originally was just having them do the cover and the interior design of the book and the reformatting of it and stuff. And about a week before we were going to re-release it, I said, "Do you think we could edit it?" And she looks at us and she goes, "Give me a minute." I guess they went to go probably put their heads together and try to figure out how crazy I actually was. Anyway, then they came back and I was like, "Okay, let me clear my schedule." So they cleared their schedule and we did a 1-week edit on this book, full manuscript. We were doing 18-hour days where she was editing, and then she would send me the edits, and I would go through them and get them back to her, and then they would apply the corrections and then send it over to the layout, and they would get them laid out. I mean, they were just a chapter at a time as they came back edited, and yeah, it was exhausting, and it was actually very fun. But if the editing isn't absolutely perfect in Embers, well, hey, she did a 1-week full manuscript edit, not just a line edit. I mean, she worked on content editing and everything while she did it. So it was amazing. So yeah.
But you don't do this kind of schedule anymore, do you?
No. Actually, the editing for Ashes took several months. She was very careful to make sure that if I mentioned something that happened in one of the previous books, that it had actually happened the way I said it did, which I went back and forth. I had both books open a lot because I keep lists of my characters, and I keep their names and what they look like, where they're from, who they're related to, and how I spelled their name written down, and that's it for story notes. I don't keep any kind of story notes on the back stuff. It's all in my head, so occasionally I have to go back and say, I know I did this, where did I do this? Oh, there it is, okay. So, but she did a very good job of going back and forth between the first 2 books and the 3rd book to make sure that I kept things consistent and, yeah, on track.
Yeah, I find that's the hardest thing because I will write something in a draft and then take it out, and I won't remember whether it's in the final book or not.
Exactly, and then you're like, what did I do with it? Did I take it out? And then, of course, with the 3rd book, I had to go round up all the plot bunnies I had running around and make sure they all went to their appropriate little boxes and you know, that kind of stuff, tie everything up. I did leave an opening for the 4th book, which I am currently working on.
Oh.
So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that would be interesting. There's still some room left for characters to do fun stuff in your series.
There's actually a lot of room left. I was a little surprised when I started Ashes. I thought it was the final book, and I would be done with Dragon's Call and be moving on. And then my characters are like, haha, yeah, you just thought you were. So, yeah. Here, this is what we're planning on doing. Oh. Okay.
So during this whole process where you're working on your first book and then working on the second one and a wholly different book shows up, what did it take to say, you know what, I'm a writer. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to take time out of my day and my kids' days and structure my day around this.
Once I started writing and just started in on it and actually started getting into the story with the first book and stuff, because at first it was just something I was just kind of doing. It wasn't, I wasn't a writer yet. I was just, I don't know, I guess it would be like the equivalent of the artist doodling. That's what I felt like I was doing, was doodling. But then once I got into it more, it got to where I have to write. I start getting actually anxious if I don't come in and write. So I don't even have a choice in it anymore. I have to come write. I usually do it late at night, though. I don't start writing until about 9 p.m. times 10. That's when the writing brain wakes up and is like, oh, hey, let's do this. And, I didn't want to sleep anyway, so, who cares? Sleep is when I'm dead, other than that. But I don't know that I ever consciously had a moment where I said, okay, this is what I'm doing. It just kind of happened. So.
Was there a point when you had your books on Amazon and you saw that they were selling that you thought, wow, this is actually something that's taking off?
Yeah, especially after Tears came out. But I actually sold 46 books the first month I had it out, which doesn't sound like a lot.
That is a lot for an unknown author.
Yeah.
My allergies messing with me. So I was really excited. I had 46 books. You know, I was bouncing off the walls. I have to admit, I had a very good support network. I was involved in the raising of dairy goats for several years, about 10 years. And I had a very wide network of people that I knew online and things like that. And I think a lot of them probably purchased the book when it came out, so that may be where that came from. I don't know. And so then my goal became I wanted to sell a book a day. I didn't care what format. As long as I sold one book a day in any format, that's all that mattered. And I've actually managed to do that. There were a few times before Tears came out that Ashes kind of dropped in how many I was selling, but it still averaged out over the month that I had sold one book a day. And so that would, so that's kind of been just my goal. And now I have it out. The first two books out in audio, and of course they're in paperback. So I really don't care what my sales are now, as long as I sell that one book a day. Out of all of my books, as long as I've sold one a day, that's all I care about. And anything else is icing on the cake. So, you know, as long as I sell 30 books a month, yay. I don't even care if it's my 99-cent one. You know, as long as I sell them.
Did you cover the audio yourself with what is it?
ACX.
ACX.
Yeah, I went through ACX to have the audio done. Ashes is currently searching for a narrator. My first narrator can't do Ashes, so I'm having to find somebody different for it. But I think I may have found a lady. She's really good, so we'll see how that goes. But
now, one thing I've heard, and you obviously can tell me whether this is still true or not, is that YA hasn't done as well with self-publishing because teenagers don't have their own Kindles, basically.
YA in the self-publishing does very well. In the ebooks, it does very well. First of all, your largest demographic reading YA are 25 to 40, I think, if I remember right, is your age group. So it's not actually teenagers. Teenagers are all getting the explicit adult books to read because they want to see what's in them. And the adults, we've already been there, done that. We know how it works. We don't need to be told again. So we're all reading the young adult books because we don't want to hear about it. So, but as far as kids not having their own Kindle, kids don't go anywhere without being connected to the internet these days via phones, tablets. You can read on any of those things. Everybody's, you know, the Kindle app is for everything. You can get it for your iPhone. You can get it for even if you have like the Nook that rivals the Amazon Fire that they came out with back before they crashed and burned. Yeah. You can actually get the Amazon app on the Nook. So, you know, and a lot of people are using that to buy books on the Nook because the Nook's
it's a good idiot, but
yeah. Well, their store for the Nook is horrendous. It's awful to try and navigate. So people just go and they buy Kindle books for the Nook. So, like I said, they're all connected. They always have a computer attached to them in some form or another, and they can usually read on any of them. So I haven't found it to be too much of a problem with that. I have to say that most of my readers, not a ton of them have been teenagers. I did get one. My last event I was at, her mother bought my young adult paranormal, and I got a message on Facebook about 2 weeks later. She said she was not a reader. She didn't like reading, and she didn't like books, but her mom had bought it for her anyway, and now she is hooked completely, and she cannot wait for the second book to come out. And yeah, so I was like, yay me!
Oh, that's great.
But I love it. I love it. It's like you feel you changed someone's life with your book, and
you really do.
And I think that's just a whole different level of reward than getting Amazon payments.
Oh, it is. I've had a few of those with Embers and, you know, with the Dragon's Call series. I had one gentleman who emailed me to tell me he was blind, completely blind. I guess he was using Braille keyboard, having something to type for him, whatever, but he got the audiobook and absolutely loved it and thanked me profusely for making my book available in a format that he could take in and absorb, because, you know, it's not like you can go down to the library or whatever and just check out a Braille book and read it. So he thanked me profusely, and I thought, you know, if I never sell another audiobook, if that's the only audiobook I ever sell, that's enough. just I had made that guy's day. He was happy. It made my day. So.
Would you say that creating audio versions gave another push to your sales?
I think it really did. I do. It's just another venue. There's a lot of people with long commutes. They like to work in the city and live further out and drive, 4 hours to work or something. So they put their yeah, they have the long commutes. Once you get into it, you don't want to necessarily live in the city, but once you get into it, everybody's headed to work, and you're just kind of stuck there. And they put them in, and they listen to these books on audio to help make their drive more pleasant. So I would not do well. I get absorbed in books when I'm reading them, or even if I was trying to listen, and I would drive off the road and crash, and they would be having me touch my nose to see if I was drunk, and I was just listening to a book. So yeah. But so a lot of people apparently can do it quite well. They do road trips, they take off cross country, and they pop the audiobook in and they listen. So I'm
having a whoa. Where's the echo coming from?
I don't have an echo.
Audra, do you have a headset?
I do, but it's not plugged in.
Could we try that?
Yeah. Do you want me to plug in my headset?
Yes, please.
Okay, hold on just a second.
Yeah, it just started echoing really badly, and I'm using a headset for that reason. Oh, maybe it's getting better again.
I can find out what I do with my cord.
It was fine most of the time.
Yeah,
I know.
Is it still echoing?
No, not for me.
Do you want me to go ahead and plug in my headset?
I guess we can try it without.
I mean, I don't mind.
Yeah, I'll have to edit that part out. Yeah, what happens is that there's feedback, sound coming out of one. Goes through another. What were we just talking about?
Audiobooks.
Audiobooks. Yeah, I actually have I keep hearing about audiobooks, but it seems like such a huge investment.
It's really not if you go through ACX, because you can get readers who will do royalty share only, and you split your royalties with them 50-50. So.
Is that a good deal?
It really is. You do have to sign a little contract with them for 5 years, I think it is, and where you agree to not put it out to other people or whatever. But it seems to go pretty well. And then your narrator you'll get auditions for your book, and you'll go through and listen to them. And once you find somebody you like, then you select them, and once they start reading, they'll read a chapter, and then they send that to you, and you have to open up your book, the print book, or you can look at it online, whichever works best for you, and you follow along while they read. And that way you mark down the times and what it was, if they messed up on something, they stumbled, or they said a name wrong, or they just didn't read that passage quite the way you want, and so you write that down, and then you send that back to them. They make the corrections. They send it back to you. You listen to it again to make sure they got it all, and then you approve that chapter. So it can be a lengthy process, but it generally, from what I understand, takes anywhere from 4 to 6 hours to make one finished hour of audiobook.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
So the royalty split is through ACX only, so it's only on the audiobook.
Yeah. It's the royalties for the audiobook. They're separate. They come separate from your ebooks and all that.
And do they handle all that? So basically, you sell an audiobook and ACX, so this splits up the royalties, and you just get your check.
Yeah. ACX takes their cut, and then they split the other up. You get yours. Your narrator gets theirs. It works out pretty well. They make sure your book is available through Amazon and through iTunes and stuff like that. So you're on more than just one thing. So people can pick it up through Audible. So that's 3 different places they can get it. So, and they give you free files. They give you coupons for free audiobooks. So you get 25 of them for each book, so that you can go through and promote your book and offer free books. So.
Can't wait for them to come to Germany.
Yes. They don't have ACX in Germany yet?
Nope, they don't. I emailed them, and they said They don't know when they're going to come. They suggested Audible, which is not as easy to handle, but yeah, ACX is not available yet, which is a shame because I think my books would do well as audiobook.
I think they would do wonderful as audiobooks.
And are you in Kindle Select?
Yes,
Yeah.
I am. Yeah.
Have you done that for a while, or with the recent changes?
No, I've done it for since Tears came out, I think, the second book. I've been in Select. I did have it across platforms. I think I made one sale on Kobo, maybe two on Nook, and then all my other sales were on Amazon. And when you're in Select, they do kind of give you a boost, you know. They try to make you more visible, whatever you get, you know, for people who are not in Select. And so I went with Select, and I do think that helped my sales as well. So plus the borrows. There's been even before Kindle Unlimited, I always had quite a few borrows each month. So they made up for anything I made at other platforms. So on other platforms.
Oh no. We're at it again. Okay. I'll change my headset and see if that's helping anything. Okay, so let's while I do that, talk about your day. How do you? What is your day as an author like?
Well, the rest of the day, it's just a day, like I said, until I get to about 9 o'clock at night, and then I start drinking coffee. Most people don't drink coffee, and they drink it in the morning, and then they stop so they can sleep at night. And I never drink coffee in the morning. I drink coffee at night. So, you know, during the day, I'm drinking tea, and so I used to drink copious amounts of Dr. Pepper, but I have quit doing that in an effort to try and be somewhat kind of healthier. And so my favorite snacks for writing were always, you know, Dr. Pepper and like Funyuns or Cheetos, but we're trying to be good. So, but now I drink, you know, I have my coffee. That's another big one is that, and I can drink 2 or 3 cups of that at night while I'm writing. So I'll be going along typing, and then I'm like, I go to take them. Oh, it's empty. So then I have to go get more, and yeah.
And
which is really bad.
How long do you write for at night? In case I missed that.
It depends on the day. Oh, it depends on the day. Sometimes I get on and it's just not flowing and it's not working, and I get, and you know, I'm sit here for like an hour and a half, and I get maybe 1,500 words written if I'm lucky, you know. And then other nights it's 3, 4 in the morning, and my writing brain is still wanting to type furiously, and the rest of my brain that controls things like my eyeballs staying, you know, eyelids open and sitting upright in my chair, kind of like waves the flags. Like, we can't do this anymore, so, you know, if you don't want to fall out of the chair, you should probably go to bed. And so then I go to bed, and my characters are still rampaging around, and I'm trying to go to sleep. I'm like, just be quiet for a minute and let me sleep. And I wrote on you guys all night. Shut up. They don't always listen.
So because I have 2 teenagers as well, and a lot of my daily schedule is built around them. Still, I always thought that this would end after a while, but it hasn't yet. You know, getting up in the morning, making sure they get up in the morning.
Yeah. Well, we actually homeschool, so our schedule in the morning is flexible, and we don't have a set time we have to get up. I got really easy teenagers. They're not into a lot of like the sports and stuff where I need to drive them around to practice and this and that. They're video gamers. I love it. We game together a lot. My son even has a YouTube channel where he does a mom plays video, because I love gaming, but it takes me a long time to learn a new game. And if I can't do the keyboard controls, I have to actually use a controller with the game. I'm even more ridiculous, because the controller never makes the person go where it says it's supposed to make them go. So we do that, and he throws a brand new game at me and the controller at me, and I have to try and play the game, which is hilarious because at that point I can't. I'm an idiot. So we do that, and then they have other games they like to play, and they have people all over the world that they're friends with. My oldest son can speak some German. He can speak Russian. He can actually read and write and speak Russian. He can speak some French, Chinese, Japanese, Punjabi, Arabic, and a little bit of Spanish. So he's got friends all over the world that he started learning the languages so he could speak to them through his Xbox and stuff like that. Yeah, when he first started learning German, he ended up meeting somebody through the Xbox that lived in Switzerland, and he was learning English. So my son would practice his German by talking to him, and he would practice his English by talking to my son. So they had a lot of fun. Like I said, they know people all over the country, all over the world. They have this huge, widespread friend base that, yeah. So now my oldest wants to be an expat teacher. So it's kind of cool.
So do you find that the gaming affects your writing at all?
No. Sometimes, sometimes it will take up more time than I intended it to. I'm fairly addicted to a game called Neverwinter, and that thing can eat away your time really, really bad. I have like 115 hours logged in this game already, so it's bad.
What? I don't know that one. What is that for?
Well, Neverwinter it's actually on Steam, and you can go on Steam and you get free to play games and stuff. Neverwinter is kind of built around the Forgotten Realms books. You create a character and stuff. I don't know if you've ever read the Dritz Duerden books by R.A. Salvatore.
Oh, yeah. Dungeons and Dragons settings.
Yes, Dungeons and Dragons stuff. So you get on there, and they actually have this whole game built around it, and you have to run through it and fight orcs and stuff. And
I have an account on it, but I haven't really played.
You're going to have to play with me. I'm Virna Duerden, actually. I made up a whole background for her, like a whole fanfic background thing for her and everything. So, yeah. And then my middle son, he plays Dritz Duerden on there, and we get on there and, yeah, we play and crash around and have fun. So it's a blast. And I actually have, like, this Black Panther that I actually named Guinevere. So, yeah.
That's an inside joke.
My son, I think, actually wants to start a video game channel. Talking about, I've wondered whether I should allow him to do it or not. I guess
heavens, yes. My son started his year and a half ago or so. Yeah. He was just barely 15. And at first he just started by putting music in. He would find videos on there that he liked, and he would find better music or music he liked better with a video, and he would put those together and edit them together and put them up with the acknowledgement that he has no rights to the video music or anything like that. And then little by little as he's gone, now we include the video game stuff in it. He does where he creates his own videos now by editing in all kinds of stuff and making his own complete videos. So it's really cool. He has a lot of fun on it. My middle son does a really good job, does a lot of the same stuff, except for he won't post any of it. He's like, just antisocial. I mean, he loves being on gaming with all of his friends, but you can't get him hardly on Facebook, and you can't get him on YouTube. He's like, no! I'm like, okay, whatever. You'll get her out of it.
Yeah, I think, it's funny how they pick up skills doing that, like video editing, like matching music to activities in the video. And they do it playing with it, and Diane does have a little background with, it's not a little background, actually a lot of background with movies, and I think there's quite an interesting connection between creating your own YouTube videos and discovering how
tools that are out there now are just so astonishing. I was in film school when nonlinear editing came out. I was like, oh wow, wouldn't this be amazing if we had this at home? Now it's on every computer.
Yeah. And he does quite a bit with it. And I have used Movie Maker for little minor things before, usually to do personal stuff for people or whatever. And like I'll put like a poem to music or something and give that to somebody as a gift. But my sons have figured out so many more things you can do with it. I never knew that. It's just a simple free program that comes with a computer. So I can only imagine what you can do with software that you actually go out and buy. It must be amazing. That's all I can figure. So.
And I think it's another level. It's another way of storytelling. Just to take it back to writing. I think we all want to tell stories.
They do. You know, my oldest, he has a lot of stories that he talks about, a lot of characters. He hasn't got to the point where he writes them. He says he starts to write them and then it just kind of disappears. And I told him, I said, you know, don't worry about it. I had, at your age, a stack of stories that were like 3 paragraphs long because I would start to write them and kind of lose interest after I kind of got into it a little bit, or wouldn't know what to do with it after I got a little ways into it. And so they just said, I said, that's part of the learning. That's how you learn, you know. Don't worry about trying to complete something big and major right now. Just enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, you won't continue doing it.
Yeah.
I have a nephew who is, let me think, 8 or 9. I can never remember. With Babel.
They grow up fast.
Yeah, they do.
And he actually has these tiny little notebooks, like this size, tiny little notebooks, and he writes stories in them. And he writes a chapter, and then he no longer knows what's going to happen, and he makes up these weird names, and he makes up these weird characters, and he reads a lot.
Yeah.
He reads all these natural science books. He has all these books on the Ice Age and dinosaurs, of course, and dragons. He loves dragons. Woo! And he writes this stuff, and he makes things up. And sometimes when I go visit, he insists on telling me his stories and reading them to me, and and talk about what, you know. I just throw questions at him so he can keep thinking and creating. And I love it when that happens, because that's really, I do my best not to push him in any direction, but I do want to encourage him to keep creating ideas and stories and characters and just have fun with it.
Exactly. And you know, like that's what my oldest does, is he'll tell me a lot about these stories. I mean, they get very involved and all that kind of stuff. And I can relate, because at his age it was easier for me to just to talk about a story or to tell about it than it was to actually write it. And then you know, he draws. He likes drawing, and he does a lot of artistic things that he likes to put together and he likes to do, and I just kind of encourage it. And kind of like the language stuff, that was actually his own doing. It wasn't anything I assigned. He just started doing it. And the one of the ladies who lives here in town, she's actually from Russia, and she taught Russian, and was a teacher over there for 20 years. And so he actually goes to her usually a couple times a week for lessons, and she's really impressed with his progress. I don't push him. I don't remind him. I don't tell him that you need to do your Russian. I never say a word. That kid is in there pulling it out on his own, working on it, and he goes back on his own and works on earlier stuff to help refresh. I mean, so he's very motivated when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Self-motivation is a huge fact. Well, in anything, right?
Anything. Yeah. Yeah. So is the art of procrastination.
So well, one of the things, part of what drove me nuts about the internet this week was the constant message that we get from self-publishing forums and get-togethers of writers that you must publish every month or you're dead, or you're wasting your time because no one will ever find you.
Really?
Yeah. I'm assuming that you don't hang out in these places, and you have not found this to be true.
No, I have not found it to be true. I don't hang out in a lot of writerly places anymore, other than like Facebook, where I have a large group of writerly friends. There's a really great geek group on Facebook that I hang out with, but they're a mix of writers and artists and cosplayers and the whole thing, so it's not just, I think Hannah's a member of the group, so she probably knows who I'm talking about, TDR. And but that's about the only place I hang out. I have found that forums can get, other than Hannah's. Hannah has a really great forum. I keep forgetting to go back to it because there's stuff I want to talk about on there and I forget to go. But most of them are very self-important and kind of pretentious, and the people get on there and they're like, oh, this is the only way, and if you don't do it this way, then, you know, and I don't believe that. There are 7 billion people on this planet. There is no one way that is the only way for anything. So, no, I don't find that to be true. I think if you're churning out a book every month, that you're not taking your craft seriously, because you can't churn out a well-crafted novel in a month. Not that has been edited and gone over and read by beta readers and things like that. You're not. Of course, I could be wrong. Like I said, there's no right way to do it. There could be somebody out there who's very talented and can just really put it out there, and they may have more time or more self-discipline than I have.
I mean, I think it is possible if you stagger it, like you write it, you send it off to editing, you send it to formatting,
Yeah,
and it takes it takes like 4 months, the whole process, but you sort of stagger your stories. And
book coming out every month. That probably is.
I think it's possible if it's more novellas or like 60 to 80K stories rather than epic fantasy.
Epic fantasy, yeah, definitely.
If you have a system lined up where you do it, and if you don't have a family, if you can really put in 10-hour days without problems, and really work
I guess,
it. I think
and like you
that's
said,
possible.
If you stagger it, then it's possible. I don't think you need to go that drastic of a route. I think what you need is a combination of a good story and a good online presence. And I don't mean by an online presence of buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Hey, look at me, I wrote a book, buy my book. It's just connecting with people. The more you get to know people, the more they get to know you, the more interested they are in what you do. And, oh, hey, she wrote a book. Hey, I've been friends with her for a year on Facebook. Hey, that's really cool. Let me go see what she wrote. Or, that kind of stuff. There are people that I find on Facebook I've been friends with for a while. I didn't realize they wrote anything. And then one day something pops up or they say something. I'm like, oh, wow, cool. So then I go look. I'm like, well, I'm more likely to buy because I've been friends with them, for, a while now. So it makes me more interested in what they're doing.
Do you put out a newsletter?
I have a newsletter. I'm very bad about putting it out. I do my newsletter about like I do my blog, which means occasionally I have something to say, so I blog about it. Then most of the time I do nothing. I tried to come up with stuff I could send out like monthly, and then I realized I was just babbling for the sake of filling space. I don't like that. Kind of the same with blogging. I was going to try and blog about stuff, but if I'm just writing something so I have something to say on my blog, then I'm wasting everybody's time. So I wait until I have something specific. So with my newsletter, if I do have news about my books, I put it out. When I do, I try to include, I think I included one of your books actually in my last one. I have it set up so there's like 3 columns down below, and so I always put, while you're waiting on my next book, check these out. And I put the books with their covers and their links and all of that, and usually they're blurb below it so that people can see other books and all of that. So, but I don't put it out very often, which in a way is kind of good because people also don't like spam. So, it's kind of that, do you put out the newsletter on a regular basis, or do you just wait until something specific so that you don't bug people? That's the biggest thing,
Yeah. So your major online presence is basically Facebook?
Basically Facebook. I have Google Plus, and I share blogs to it. When I post a blog or other people post blogs or book releases, whatever, I share that to Google Plus. But frankly, Google Plus, it confuses me. So I don't post a lot on Google Plus because it's just not as easy for me. Twitter took me 2 full years to figure out how to work. I had Twitter, had no idea what to do with it or how to use it. Plus, I'm rather long-winded. So 140 characters, not even 140 words, but 140 characters to say something. I'm like, how can I trim this down so I have to keep redoing my tweets sometimes unless I'm just doing random stuff?
It's an art form.
It really is, and I've gotten to where I'm trying to tweet more because I to connect with people on Twitter more. I sometimes forget it's over there, not because I don't like Twitter, but it sometimes confuses me, so I avoid it, which is not good. I should be like, hey, I have Pinterest. Again, I just share blog posts and whatnot with. Frankly, I don't even know how to get to Pinterest. To my Pinterest unless it's the little button at the bottom of the blog that says share it to Pinterest, So I can't remember how to get there very often.
I know that there are people who use Pinterest for their writing communities.
Yeah.
I have not figured that out.
I haven't either. The one time I made it to Pinterest without going through a blog, I got stuck on recipes, and I think I came out of Pinterest like 12 hours later with enough recipes to sink a battleship. So I try to avoid Pinterest now. I like to cook, so I come across recipes and I'm like, yay, recipes! I have stacks of them everywhere. My husband's like, are you trying to make it all overweight? So I try to avoid it, and then like I said, so Facebook is my main one. I have my personal page and I have my author page, and sometimes they kind of spill over into each other, so I always try to make sure my personal page is not that personal, actually. You know, I try not to put anything on there I don't mind the whole world knowing.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, I think that's
kind of the law with
the rule about Facebook.
Yes.
So well, it's the rule about the internet, frankly.
Period. Yeah.
So we are coming up on the hour. Do you have any pithy advice that you would give to writers out there who perhaps are wondering what they're doing and or what they should be planning on doing?
The biggest thing they should be planning on doing is writing until they finish something. I mean, so many writers start out and they get part way into something and then they stop and they start something new because it's exciting and they don't finish the old one. And if you want to be serious about it and stuff, you've got to finish it. So quit trying to edit it. Quit worrying about if all your plot bunnies are in order. Quit worrying about all of that. Just write it. Everything else can be fixed in revisions and in editing and all of that. Just work on your craft. Work on writing. Finish it. So that's my biggest. Once you finish it, it's amazing how much easier it is to go on and do another book. So.
I love that.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a blast.
And stay on, Audra, even if you go off air.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so if you're enjoying the podcast, if you have a moment, please rate us on iTunes. Even better would be a review, but please leave a rating and leave it on iTunes, which is the main place where people find out about podcasts. That's it for this week's podcast of the 21st Century Writer. My name is Diane Patterson.
I'm Hannah Steenbach.
And our guest has been Audra Trosper. Thank you very much, and hope to have you join. Well, not you, but the listener. You, the listener, join us again next week. Bye.